going on, everyone? Welcome to the Dr. Funk live show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in live, checking us out on YouTube and Facebook Live. Subscribe on Apple Music and other places. Always appreciate your support and donations. Today, we have acclaimed author and poet Scott Woods on, and who's also a Prince aficionado. Not going to say historian because it seems like everyone uses that word. But it's going to be a really, really fun show. Scott is just an amazing person that you guys should already know. If not, well, we're going to get into it. What's going on, Canada? Good to see you there. Scott, I forgot to tell you about comments. If you want to access them, I think you do a thing to the right side of your screen. It should be there, so you can access all the comments that you're going to see from Facebook and YouTube. What's going on, Kenneth? Glad you guys can join. Doing a little bit an hour earlier just because, my guest, you got to do what they want and have them on. You love learning about new people that you don't know about. That's always a good thing. What's going on, Laura? Well, I'm just looking at what we discussed last week of misinformation going through Right On magazine where people thought it was Prince really being engaged to Wendy and that the press got it wrong. Gotta love some of this stuff that goes out. We'll get into that further, possibly an after show or another date. Right now, I don't want to waste too much time talking about the person that we're going to have on before we get into things. So, Scott, as I said, acclaimed author. Books that you should be getting are over here now, which is a collection of poems. But it does have some print stuff in here that you guys should definitely read. They have Urban Contemporary History Month. Should be all up on that. And then, of course, one that you guys should already have, and if you don't know about, you got to order it. And we'll be putting up links through the show for all three books and his Patreon, Prince and Little Weird Black Boy Gods. It's a very, very smart and funny book that I want to talk about a few things in there as well. Right now, without further ado, I want to bring in the aficionado I was talking about, the one and only Mr. Scott Woods. Mr. Woods, it is a pleasure to have you on, my friend.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
I'm honored to have you on, as I was saying before. Hope your week has been going well. Good. You did a really good job with the Fox 9 News Minneapolis yesterday as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, you had you went to the Prince Immersive Experience in Chicago last week, and we haven't had anyone on yet that's went. And you do have a great article that you wrote on it that I put out, but tell me about it.
Sure. So Kanisa Williams, Darling Nisi, she put together a group. She just kind of put out a call to some people and was like, hey, we all want to go see this. Do you want to go as a group? And so I think most of us said, yeah, let's do this. And so we all met from all over the country in Chicago. And we went on Saturday. It's been open a little bit longer than before we were there, but we went as a group. It was about 12 of us. And it was actually pretty dope, right? We can get into it as much as you want to get into it. I don't know how spoiler free you want it to be or how deep you want to get, but we can get as deep as you want to go.
We can get into it. If people have a problem with it, we'll let them know after however many minutes if they're watching a playback not to do it. But please, the whole thing is I feel this is promotion for them, free promotion. So tell about your experiences and more, because some people just think, oh, it's just photos.
It is definitely not that.
Right.
So I want to preface this by saying I've been to Paisley Park several times, all after Prince passed. I was there the second day that Paisley Park opened to the public in 2016, when things were still pretty raw. The urn was still on the floor, this kind of stuff. And so I have that. And then I've been to a celebration after that. And you and I actually saw each other in person at the album release for Welcome to America. Because I've been to
Yeah.
Paisley Park several times, and every time I go, I'm like, I wish this was a little more. No exhibit can do Prince justice. We just need to kind of get that out the way. No single exhibit. And so, even Paisley Park, right? So, I actually went into the immersive joint with some reservations. I was kind of like, I don't know. It's going to be for the public. It's going to be in Chicago. It's in an old Virgin mega store, right? Um, I was skeptical going in, but right away I could tell that they had really taken their time and to get it, I don't, as right as I think a mainstream, for people walking in off the street, casual fan experience might be. And there are definitely things that are in the immersive experience that Paisley Park should take some notes, right? Um, there's a couple of ticket levels, right? Like ranging from I think like 40 or whatever to like 65. There's really not any difference in the experience itself between those ticket levels. So the only real difference is kind of a couple of pieces of swag that you kind of score if you go high. Um, and they're not things that you can just buy out of the store, but they're also not terribly expensive things either. Like it's like a lanyard, reproduction and a poster. Um, but look, I'm like, yo, if there's gonna be something dope and the only difference is $20, then I'm gonna spend the $20. So I got the
Right.
gold experience level, and they you just kind of enter. You go up some escalators to get into like they make you walk past the gift shop right out the gate. And at first I thought, well, that's kind of defeating the purpose. But what's actually very cool about that is that you can go to the gift shop without going in the experience at all. Like you can just walk off the street, go in there, drop some money on some stuff, right? And just walk out, like having spent nothing but whatever you spent in the gift shop. I thought that was very cool, right? You can't just walk into Paisley Park's gift shop like that, so I thought that was dope.
Right.
Um, and then so you take the escalators up and there's like a long hallway with, these very large pictures of Prince, of course. But the thing that kind of bear note about this entire experience is that there's a lot of photo opportunities. Like they encourage you to take as many photos as possible, which is something else that was, very different for me and a Prince experience, right? I think Paisley Park has eased that up a little bit in recent years, but when I was there actually every time that I've been there so far, they're like, yo, lock your phone up, hold on to your memories, whatever. So um and then they walk you like through a quick intro video, just to kind of let you know what you're in for in terms of tone, right? It's kind of a funny little video. And then they open these side doors that are just kind of ripped right from the When Doves Cry video. These French doors open up, and then you're in the video set, right? Like the bathtub, the sink. There's a little, there's a hat. There's the big, white face mural. Like it's as close to being in the video as you're going to get, and you get to pose with all that stuff, take pictures with all that stuff. They encourage you not to get into the bathtub, but other than that, people were just doing all kinds of wacky stuff around the tub and doing like whole photo shoots. It was, and that's the first room, right?
Courage.
Um, and it
Courage
was,
not to get.
yeah, it
Okay.
was dope. It was really dope. Like that's a great way to open that, you know. And with the import that When Doves Cry had on his career, it's a great, smart way to kind of open the whole tour. I should also mention that when we keep calling it a tour, it's self-guided, right? There's no guides, there's no people on the side dropping you wrong information, right? You're just kind of walking through it, and you can kind of go back and forth through it as you see fit. Um, and so they have a room where it's basically, they have a proper name for it. I just kind of call it the Minneapolis Roots room, where they have like pictures of the family, his home, places in Minneapolis that were important to Prince in his life. some interactive kiosk videos there as well. Um, they then walk you through like a kind of like a twisted hall. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm skipping. I don't have it all in order in my head anymore.
Okay.
But the next room is like a reproduction of Studio B at Paisley Park, which is a pretty big deal when you get to go to Paisley Park. But you don't get to go into the booth. Maybe that's different now. It's been a couple of years since I've been with the pandemic, but at the time, traditionally, you can't go into the booth, of course. And so, what this exhibit seeks to do is to recreate the booth, right, in some kind of very simple way. And they have this really cool setup where they have what looks like an enormous mixing board, but it's actually stations where you and maybe one other person can put on some headphones and you get to mix the song "Let's Go Crazy" with 8 tracks, right? Which is kind of dope, right? Like you get to actually like decide, I just want to hear Prince singing over bass, or I just want to hear Prince singing over the drums, or I just want to hear the guitars. They did a really good job with that. Like that's really fun to mess with, right? And then you kind of come out of that room and you go into like a hall where they have all the records listed, like every Prince record, and I have to put an asterisk on that, right? They don't really focus at all on any of the side projects, the associate stuff, none of that. They just really focus on straight up Prince records that everybody in theory would have gotten in a record store. No bootlegs, nothing like that. It's not deep like that. But to see all of those records like on a wall, and they all get basically the same level of shine. They're all the same size. They all get like a paragraph description, and they list all the songs on the record. And they do that for every record. And so to see all of that together is very overwhelming. Even when you know all that information, it's dope to see it, in the wild, as it were, right? Like you don't have to look it up. It's how a museum might display it, and they don't give any short shrift to records that most people may not know, right? So, the Slaughterhouse record is on the wall. The Chocolate Invasion is on the wall. It's really dope. And then that dumps you into a Diamonds and Pearls room, which is also basically set pieces. A Chase Lounge, a nice chair, this big gold frame, there's pearls everywhere. And you can just like take pictures with all of that stuff. And trust me, there were people who spent a lot of time in that room trying to look dope for the gram. There's a room after that's I think I called it like the Freedom Room, right? Where it kind of focuses on Prince's campaign, right, to free himself from bad deals, to kind of change the relationship with the industry between artists, himself. But then there's also something I call the Black Wall, where they have this nice shout out to Prince's philanthropy, his self-awareness as a Black person, his attempts to really try to do great work in the community. I was really surprised to see that wall. Like Paisley Park doesn't have that wall. I think it's supposed to be implied, but we're at a point, I think, in building Prince's legacy where you can't take things like that for granted. We have to kind of be saying these things out loud, fixing them into the record, and then building on that information. And this exhibit really stepped up in that regard. Also got to give a shout out to the Purple Rain Room, right? So the album cover recreation with the motorcycle and a staircase, right? That was great. And it's funny, like for whatever reason, I guess to make it as immersive as possible, like they have the motorcycle like running, not realistically running, but they have something that is approximating that, like a revving engine, and they have like fog and smoke all in the room, right? So it's very picturesque, compared to the album cover. But they also, in that same room, it's not just about the album cover. They've taken I think what they were really going for is to try to put you outside of First Avenue in an alley, because they have the black wall with all the stars up. They have the gold leaf star for Prince. They had some really nice touches, the Darling Nikki graffiti on the door, the fake newspaper about the Battle of the Bands at First Avenue, to me was like chef's kiss, right? That was just like some awesome fan fiction to bring to life. It's a small detail, but it's way impressive. Um, After that, there's I'm probably gonna miss a couple things, but there's a glam slam nightclub dance floor situation happening. So they have a live DJ. They use local DJs in rotation to man that room. Um, and it's very stroby. It's a literal dance floor. So, when I walked in there was visitors who were in there just jamming, right? Um, that was dope. They do have a few outfits on display, right? In glass cases, a few instruments. I felt like the instruments might be replicas, but the outfits were legit. And then there's a final room where there's it's called the Prince Mood Room, I think. And basically they had these kiosks these really large touch screens where you would step up individually, put on some headphones, and they just kind of walk you through like a little survey of things on the screen, like what's your favorite Prince font? Do you like this song? Pick 7 words out of this jumble. And then at the end of all of these questions, they tell you what your Prince mood is. And then they give you, and this is really dope, they kick out a little 5-song playlist, a 4 or 5-song playlist for you. And you're able to QR scan it and share that with the world if you wish. Really dope. And then you walk out, cool thing. And that's more or less the exhibit, right? It takes about an hour, right, give or take. And so yeah, those are the broad strokes. I'm telling you, I missed at least 1 or 2 things that will come to me after the fact, but I guess I don't want to. Subconsciously I don't want to spoil it all for you.
No, I appreciate it. So maybe that's why, because with the motorcycle running, maybe that's why you didn't look so comfortable on the motorcycle. Maybe that's the reason.
We'll go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're not used to it. I like when they had it set up at the celebration back in 2001 or 2002. You can get on the graffiti bridge bike. I don't think I looked that comfortable. But then again, I had someone on the bike with me. But yeah, I mean, you got to do the whole posing thing or whatnot. I say like you were like, I'm gonna be on it, like I'm gonna ride it, but you were like, that's cool. I think it's a great photo op and stuff for it, though, for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing that I was kind of bummed about is they wouldn't let anybody go on the stairs to play the Apollonia part. You know what I'm saying?
At least when you were there, right?
What's that?
At least when you were there, right? Didn't you say that they did allow someone like a day later?
We did see a picture later where somebody was like on the stairs, and we was like, all right, y'all. All right.
It wasn't Apollonia herself, though, right?
Not even close.
Just making sure. But yes, and what Kanisa mentioned earlier, I did put up on the screen, just about that. Paisley Park does allow you just to go to the store or hang out in the music club room if you want to do, which they didn't do before for several years, and it's now something that they've done during the pandemic that did change. And that's kind of cool. I like that, because I would know some people that were going from out of state and there was new merch there. They didn't want to take the tour, and they would actually pay for the tour just to get to the merch place, if you can believe that. Like for real, for real.
I can believe it. I don't understand it.
And I saw, and I'm glad that you're not wearing it now because I want you to be comfortable. I saw that you were rocking the Raspberry Beret Cloud hoodie, and they had a lot of merch. I, of course, really want eventually that basketball one.
Yeah, they've got some nice stuff. It's funny, like the gift shop. I guess we should talk about that a little bit too.
Mhm.
I thought, okay, they're gonna have a gift shop. It's probably just gonna be a bunch of stuff from Paisley Park that they just shipped here, whatever, for the rubes. And it was not like that. Like I thought, I'd buy one or two things, and they got me. Like Prince got me. He got my wallet good. They had a lot of just very immersive, specific branded stuff. So that the hoodie you mentioned is actually like a sweatsuit set. So there's pants that go with it. I did not get the pants, but I did buy both of the tops. Right, there's like a couple of those, and a couple of totes. I bought a coffee mug. I went a little nuts. But like that was new stuff to me. I didn't see that in other places, so I appreciated that they made the effort.
I hear when you get the entire cloud outfit, the hoodie and the pants, for some reason you start just coughing for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Sorry, had to make that
No,
link
yes.
joke.
I'm sure someone's doing it right now.
Right.
Oh,
yes.
Nisi mentions in the comments that I see, yeah, there's a photo booth there. So like in the lobby, right? So I guess technically you could do that too without actually taking the tour. But it's just like one of those old school, pull a curtain, get 3 shots with you and a friend or by yourself, whatever. And that's cool. And you get like 2 copies of the photos, which is nice. And it has different backgrounds. So you get to choose your background.
I saw like a lot of amazing shots that Rennie St. Nicholas did, and just blown up to perfection. Like, we need some of those to be sold. Maybe not $5,000 like Jeff Katz ones, and unless you got Questlove's jobs, you ain't getting them all.
Right.
Yeah.
What was cool too, like it was like what was interesting about the way they displayed everything, like on the walls. This is I assume that this will be a touring exhibit. I don't know what the plans are. I know it's in Chicago for a pretty good length of time. But the walls are not traditional walls for an exhibit. What I mean is normally when you have like these really huge photos and whatnot, they're on some kind of board or, some kind of wood or panel or something. And these were all most of them anyway, were like on a really interesting fabric. Like, so if you actually touch it, which, I mean, you're touching everything else, so I assume you're allowed to touch the photos as well. But it's actually fabric. And I was really surprised at that because usually when you see that kind of material with this kind of work, it's kind of dull, there's some blurring, there's some bleed, something like that, but it looks like it's on fabric. And this stuff did not look like that. So when you see like these really tall, 6 foot tall, 7 foot tall print pictures, those are all on fabric, which is really dope if you are touring an exhibit, right? Because you can just roll that stuff up. It's lighter, it ships better. It's just there's just a lot of really smart things here. There are some things that are missing, but that's okay. Like, I will tell you one thing that's missing that is not okay with me. Okay, for the record, there's no real Under the Cherry Moon presence, right? Like, that's my movie, that's my Prince, and like there's none of that, and that was unfortunate. So,
well, at least we got that there.
yes.
I'm looking at a poster right here of it, but I want to pull that out. But hopefully in the future, and this will be a traveling exhibit, and people constantly keep going, where's it going to next? It's not the point. The whole thing is if it's there. If you're planning to go to Chicago, it's a tourist attraction. Do these things. I do know of 2 other locations that they're going to have. It is going to be a touring one, but if you're going to be in Chicago, stop by and see it. That's all. I know that traveling is expensive right now. Inflation is absolutely ridiculous. We get it, but it will be traveling. We just can't tell you where it's going to go yet, because that defeats the purpose of it being something that you see when you travel. Anyway,
I will tell you, like, it's interesting. I've talked to several like super fans who have not been, and their first question is, should I go? And so, and it depends, right? So, like, to me, if you are in Chicago, like on a trip or whatever, or you're within like a couple of hours of Chicago, like, and you're a Prince fan of any level, like, that's a no-brainer. You should absolutely go see this. It's not putting you out to go see this. I had to drive like 6 hours. I drove with Erica Thompson. We are both in Columbus, so we jumped in the car and hit it. And that's like 6 hours, average. And then you have to stay over, and then you're not going to drive back the same day, so you're probably staying over 2 nights, right? I stayed 2 nights. And the exhibit I was really glad to have seen it. And so if you're like a super fan, like a hardcore fan, like you just know everything, you've seen everything, you heard everything, like this is not that exhibit, right? That said, I do think that there is something to be had for seeing someone and an art that we care so much about as a community out in the wild, right? Where people can just walk in off the street and see it. Like, Prince still doesn't have that kind of cultural insertion at this point. And so this is kind of a step in that direction, right? Like, where, one of the things since he's passed away that I think the top priority for most fans is, concern about his legacy, making sure that his name is out there, his music is out there, and that all of that is given like the proper level of respect. And this exhibit, I think, is a great step in that direction. It by itself, it would be wanting, but it's not by itself. We do have Paisley Park, we do have Celebration, they are still releasing music. And so if you kind of start putting these pieces together, you will start building the foundation for the legacy that we're so concerned about.
Right. For sure on that. Someone's asking, is there any type of stuff like this happening around Toronto? Don't know yet, Susie, but who knows in the future? Hopefully, like we said, this will be a traveling one. And Olga adds, also, if you go and stay a few days, take the experience twice. I enjoyed it more the second time on my second day, because you're able to let things breathe. It's like my word right now, letting things breathe, and the expression. And what you brought up, and this is a perfect transition in my opinion, because you have the essays in here on this book.
Yes.
And again, for people looking for it, we're going to have another link for it again. Prince and Little Weird Black Boy Gods, Prince Essays by Scott Woods. One of the things that you say, one of the essays is every Prince fan is the world's biggest Prince fan. So you're commenting on people saying whether they're a big fan or not, because you'll always get that person you talk to, oh my God, I love Prince. And I'm like, wait, he released more than 5 albums?
Right.
But, and I love the article, and I don't want to ruin it for people. But, I always say that women are bigger fans than us guys, because some of these guys, they come off more as collectors, or there's ownership of him, and it's problematic in different ways. With women, I think it's more genuine. And come on, we weren't screaming for him the way they were screaming for him. And he'd always be like, fellas sounding kind of weak. Just saying.
Well, there's a lot of machismo with dudes who are fans, right? It was interesting, like, coming up, growing up with Prince, around me. musically and in my neighborhood and whatnot, like dudes were real funny that way, you know. There was a Prince that they could get with, and then at some point they flipped the switch and it was like, I still listen to it, but you know, the McKees mode kicks in. And I never let that kick in. I was just like, yo, y'all just gonna be missing out then because I'm all over this. You know, I'm not going to let my ego or, you know, my masculinity be challenged by Prince, you know. I'm gonna play these, I'm gonna buy these records. So
Right. And I always call it testosterone.
yeah.
And then back to the book, something that I loved because it kicks off, aside from the introduction, but the things I'm reasonably sure Prince has never done.
Yeah.
And the thing about Prince never wearing the Michael Jackson jacket, that's just classic.
So it's interesting, you know, I made that list. It has like 100 items on it. And the minute that I published it, like I first published it like as like a random list on like Twitter or something. And before I actually put it in the book, a lot of that appeared on the line before it went into the book. And then I tweaked it and then I added new stuff to make the book. But that list in particular, I immediately got like a couple of hits where people were like, well, this one thing, Prince actually did a blah, 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 whatever the thing was. And like, I'm not going to change the list. You know what I'm saying? Like I wrote 100 things. You came back with one edit. I'm good. You know, make your own list. But yeah, that was a lot of fun to make. And it was funny because like, as you know, a lot of the list is very mundane stuff, right? Like cutting grass. It's like, okay. I mean, you can't even see Prince cutting grass. Like even no matter how wild your imagination is, that's just not a thing you can really envision, you know?
Even though he said, like, when Muhammad Ali hit him up, you know, he's like, tell him I said yes, even if it's just to mow the lawn. You know, he made a joke about Michael saying the same thing, but I thought that was just so funny because I think there's even like a shot, although it's Prince on a bike. When I first saw a Steve Park photo that was in the calendar, it looked like hedge clippers. Like for real.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you know, look, Prince has a lot of props. I'll just put it that way.
Right.
I don't know if he has a lot of to-do lists, but he has a lot of props.
I would just have loved to have this list come out, and I bet you'd be like, he would have took this as a challenge. Could you imagine if you would have wrote this when he was here? I bet you'd be like, all right, let's go to Coinstar. Right. Like I could have seen him doing this stuff for real.
Absolutely.
That would have been hilarious. Now, I do think, although maybe we got to ask someone who was on the Betcha Bagali Wow video about pumping his own gas. So we got to see about that.
Yeah. I mean, like that's one that was on the fence. Like, you know, he drove cars by himself. So it's very possible that he occasionally put gas in the vehicle.
Or maybe that's why he had a passenger so they can do it.
I mean, you know, right.
Being playful. Yeah. But I can't tell you guys, like, don't get tripped out by the title. And I mean it by certain people that are a snowflake. Just like someone told me before, like Black Sweat was such a good song. It would have been a hit if he called it Hot Sweat. And I just looked at him like, yeah, you're missing the point. But This book is so good for you guys. And it just explains a lot of things. Another thing you talked about recently was that people are reading less books, like maybe one book. What did you say exactly? So I don't correctly.
My day gig is librarian, and so it's in my interest to be aware of literacy statistics. And so basically the average American reads like 12.6 books per year. Now that's gone down, right? It was like a few years ago, it was like 15 books a year. And if you think about it, like that's an average, right? So, you know, however many people they surveyed, but you know, representatively, half of the country don't read. half the country may read, and somewhere in the middle is 12 books a year, you know.
Right.
And when you think about how many people that you just kind of interact with on a daily basis who don't seem to read at all, like ever, like any books, like you kind of get in a sense of how big that number really is.
Right. Do graphic novels count, especially if they're 1,000 pages?
I mean, yes,
Okay.
yes. It's
So
the question isn't about the pictures.
okay. So then I guess I read close to probably 50 to 100 books a year then,
That
aside
sounds
from
fair.
biographies, some stuff I picked up recently from George Carlin and a few others. But another thing about this book, and this is why, let's get that average up of the one. A great essay in here. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. Michael Jackson versus Prince, who was the best? It's a good one. And just Paisley Park is in your heart in Minnesota, but mostly your heart. There's a lot of really great stuff in here, guys. You should pick it up. Um, I don't think it was on sale for Prime Day anyway, but if you can find it at local bookstores or whatnot, I really would like Fetus to start carrying this in some other places, like for sure.
That would be dope.
You know, in my opinion, like I really liked it, and I like your other books, and just like with We Over Here Now, which I did bring up as well, there is some Prince stuff in here as well, you guys. I would like you like look, it doesn't always have to be Prince. So people don't have to understand. You can listen to other things, you can read other things. It's actually good for you. um, you know, but in here about basically now I'm losing it for some reason, but like basically like goes through Prince's point of view, some of it, like some songs, like 13 songs that everyone should know or whatnot. So if
Yeah,
I'm
it's
getting everything
like
you know about Prince in 13 songs.
yes,
Something like that.
yeah, that was a lot of fun to write. Like back when I wrote that poem and that book, I was like at a real high point in my poetry writing.
Mhm.
And so like I was just really activated. If you throw something at me, I could just write a poem about it, boom, gone. And so a 13-part poem about Prince was like in my wheelhouse, right? So I had a lot of fun writing that poem. And if you're a fan, there are things in it that I think are for fans, right? Little nods to trivia or things from his life, that kind of thing.
And I love this comment from Nisa. Because I know when the Rainbow Throne thing was wrapping the book, I'm like, bet that's her.
Yeah, we I don't want to say we fight, that's not the word. We go back and forth over that album with some frequency, right? Like I don't bring it up, she brings it up, and then we have to go back and forth, right?
Mhm.
But I have amended my position a little bit on it. Like I struggled with that record when it came out. And with most Prince albums that I struggled with when they came out, I didn't listen to them. Like they're not in the rotation, right? Like I listened to it, however many times I listened to it to say I was conversant. But then it's if it's not in regular rotation, it ain't regular rotation. So like I could
Right.
go, several years without listening to a Prince album that I'm not a fan of, And
Right.
for a long time, that was one of those records. And that had obviously, in reflection, if we're going to talk about Rainbow Children, and I know she wants me to, um, that's one of those records where, like, if you were like a fan of a certain age at the time that album dropped, it hit you different. Like, it was like my expectation for a Prince record at that point was different than the Prince I got. And so I was real frustrated by that album out the gate.
Mhm.
And it took, years later for me to get it, to figure out, to learn a bit more about what he was trying to do with it. And so, I've amended my position. I have a strong appreciation for it.
Right. The first time we heard it was June 2001 at Paisley. And for a lot of people, it didn't go over too well. There was upsetness that were happening in the discussions with Prince and Kevin Smith. I was not included in those discussions. I did write a review for Uptown after giving it only one listen, and that, you know, they call it the controversial new album, and that's what he used as the sticker for it. But I'll say this: several months later, we have 9/11 happen, and then you're hearing it again with different ears and changed minds. I think a little bit more people were open to it at that time, but it still took several people years. There'd be some people that are like, wow, the jazz instrumentation, all these things are amazing on it, that they wish that it would have been also an instrumental album, which never would have suggested to Prince. He'd be like, get out. You're never coming back to Paisley again. But the thing is like, you know, we were in there listening to it the first time, and Wedding Feast hits. We're like, wait, what? And then when he follows it up with She Loves Me For Me, does this stuff. It hit different. And of course, stuff looks back on. I remember people first were upset at One Night Alone. And the reason I mention that is kind of like that came out shortly after it, in a sense, through the music club. And then people were like, oh, it's a terrible album. It's only 30 minutes. Then the same person 6 months later, it's so amazing. It's the perfect run time for my bath. And I'm like, see, sometimes some things grow. I think sometimes what people do, and I'm not saying you, that they're comparing it to the past. It's not going to take away the enjoyment of it. But yes, with that, as you're saying of a certain age, it hits you differently. And you're like, yo, like, this isn't what I'm wanting from him.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know for me, like a lot of it, like I was completely fine with Prince's growth. I believe in it. As an artist, I believe in having the freedom to express and to grow. So I didn't have that beef with Prince. My beef with Prince was, man, you can do anything, and this is what you chose to do, right? Like my thing was all like, but are you living up to your potential, Prince? You know, and which is a horrible thing to say as a fan, right? Like, who am I to judge his potential? But I just felt like he had done so many progressive things in the past. I didn't need it to sound like those things. I'm into a progressive Prince, a Prince that reinvents. You know, like the music on the Parade record is like a new form of music, right? It's not just like new Prince. It's like new music. Right. And then he like sets it away. You know, he puts it away, right? And he does that several times in his career, like several times. And so I was always kind of getting frustrated in the later years because I didn't quite see that kind of consistent progression that I was really into. And I was essentially wrong about that, right? Like he was progressing and developing, and, you know, like his musicianship in his later years is, you know, unparalleled by his younger years. And so I was wrong. I just didn't like it, which is different, right?
And with Under the Cherry Moon, I'm hoping, because I know, regardless of who's running stuff, we're most likely going to be getting a 40th anniversary Purple Rain celebration release, yada, 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 back in theaters. What I want is that money to be saved, because the thing is, in order to make money, you got to spend money, and you have to think outside it. I would like to see in 2026, if there isn't a Parade Super Deluxe by then, that for the 40th anniversary of that, we get it treated a certain way and back in theaters and having stuff. Because I feel like, look, Prince didn't exactly go on Carson or Merv Griffin or Regis and Kathy Lee back then. And they weren't going to have Jerome on at that point. So the thing is people were expecting Purple Rain Part 2. And I think that's what led to the reviews, led to the dismal performing. But if you take it for what it is, of how funny it is, aside from the death at the ending, spoiler alert, I think it deserves to be back in the theaters and deserves to have a new appreciation for it. I know at one time he said that when Graffiti Bridge was getting bad reviews, like they dissed Wizard of Oz at first. And he thought that later on Graffiti Bridge would get its accolades. I'm not so certain about that. But with Under the Cherry Moon, there's a chance, and this is why it's so important even with the 90s stuff. And I'm glad, like, I was going to make a joke when you're bringing up that all the albums were put together at the Immersive Experience. There was no combined sets. Excuse me. That things have to go with that. And I don't think Parade, even though Kiss was a number one hit, it didn't get his flowers. It didn't get the attention, especially all the music that was in the movie that wasn't on the Parade soundtrack. And what you can do with that, be it an Honest Man or other things, I would love to see that in the future happen and it be open to a whole new audience. That's
Mhm.
all.
Yeah, like part of the problem there, of course, in the past was that, because Prince was popular, he was not being given his just due as, a genius. Like they were not dissecting the music, journalists, critics, whatever, were not digesting the music in that way on that level. They were just like, well, he's a pop artist, which he was, among other things. And they were just like, well, if this isn't pop music, then he's not doing his job. And I'm like, yo, y'all missed the mark big time. So I put a lot of the blame on that whole industry, right? That whole journal critic industry, for not being more discerning at the time, right? Like, they should have, it's easy now to kind of go back and say, well, let us all, create scholarship and really start to dissect what Prince was doing musically, and which frankly is still not happening at the level that it should. Um, but it wasn't happening almost at all back then. Like all of the reviews and all of the journalism and stuff was like, is he as popular as he used to be? Is he selling as much as he used to? How are his concerts doing? And it's like, yo, can we talk about, the fact that Parade has all this French romanticism in it? Like, can we, or no, we're not going to do that? Okay. All right. I guess we'll wait 20 years.
Right. Or now 40.
Now
And
40, right. Yeah.
you had like Randy Newman, because you brought it up, and that Prince and musical portrait that Albert Magnoli put together, where Randy Newman's like, well, he's not selling records like he used to. He's not selling like records like Def Leppard. No, for real now. All
Right,
right,
right.
but and here's a question from Rachel: like, how do you feel about a colorized version of Under the Cherry Moon? Are you team black and white or team color? I know Jerome has said there may be a version of that in the vault, but let me hear your thoughts on that.
I could go either way. I mean, I would love to see a colorized version, but if I never saw a colorized version, that would be okay with me too. I understand that a colorized version would not be the film that he made, right? And to colorize it is only to serve us who care, who
Right.
want to see that, who are thirsty, you know. But I don't think that's a bad thing to ask for. I mean, he took a really big chance with that film in several ways, but obviously the most important way being that he flipped it to black and white. And so, out of curiosity, of course, I would love to see a colored version.
Mhm.
But if they never did it, I would be okay with that.
Right. That could be something for 2026, depending on the interest in what can be done. They have some theaters, and I'm like saying, because they had deals in place to put Syracuse back in the theaters, is what I'm going to say, with Regal Cinema. So if there's a way to put, although it'll be a limited release, I imagine it wouldn't be expanded unless it does well. But have it to where some theaters are showing black and white, and if there is a color version that we're hearing about, have that be done as well, and then we can see ticket sales of black and white versus color. Just saying, it's a thing to work on. We have about 4 years.
Yeah, I think we can all rest easy knowing that there is a colored version. Okay, I think we should just assume that.
Right. Until Jerome tells us otherwise, or until someone's in the vault that can kind of do it that doesn't sign an NDA for it or whatnot.
Yes, I
That's
think
not
it's in everybody's interest to put out a color version in some capacity, right? Just
right.
so we can say that we did it.
In talking about Prince's philanthropy that they had in the immersive experience and whatnot. I'm really hoping with the docu series for Netflix, knowing with how long it's going to be, that there's at least one episode that covers all that. because just like in I believe it's in the Urban Contemporary History Month book, you bring up, because it was written I think in 2012, and you bring up about Trayvon Martin and the things that we didn't know of, like Prince, paying for the funeral or whatnot. I would like to see those things kind of like be connected and be explained to other people that just don't understand it, that it wasn't reported on as much, and that's a little bit problematic, and that's why we have to change the history, not where people are doing of revising the history, but actually getting the history correct.
Yeah,
I think that's important. So I'm hoping for that docu-series they will do it. If not, there's a documentary that needs to be made further and expand more than Mr. Nelson on the North Side did. That's all. What do you think about that? I think it's important.
Oh, it's absolutely important. Absolutely. I think anytime that we can kind of paint a broader picture of Prince beyond the music, we should. Especially if it's going to be this kind of work. If it's going to be philanthropy and charitable work, like all of that should have a light shown on it. To what degree, who's to say? But I think that it's important to show that he was an artist who dealt in values, right? Like he was a mission-based artist. He was a values-based artist, and he was a values-based person. And so it didn't just stop with, well, I wrote a song about Baltimore. It's like, yo, I went to Baltimore, I played in Baltimore, I gave the money to Baltimore, that kind of situation, right? That's not just to satisfy me as a fan, right? Like, I already know that. That is to get, people who are not hip, and to maybe even get other artists to follow in kind.
Right. And at the time of the Baltimore release, a lot of people were slamming on social media, but now we're going to look back on it and it was being manipulated. It was people that weren't exactly fans, but being vocal and be like, oh, he's getting political, blah, blah, blah. It's all this. It's coming out of left field and wasn't paying attention to it as much. Now I look back on it because I'd be having discussions that day with his team, like, yo, this is going this way. Do we want to discuss it? And he was like, no, just ignore it. But now you see that there's some manipulation going on. And now looking back on it, being able to do stuff, because that song was slammed. They're like, oh, it's terrible. But again, it was people that weren't fans, but had voices. There'll be a lot more people that aren't on social media that are huge fans. But the thing is that the people sometimes that complain the most complain the loudest. And that's a problem.
I feel you. And I mean, look, as someone who complains a lot about a lot of things, I get it.
I'm with you on that. So, and then this was told, I believe this is probably brought up at her dance class, which I wasn't at that Sunday. Maite mentioned in Minneapolis last month, she too is working on a documentary regarding Prince's philanthropic efforts. So that's cool. We need more of that. And I just feel that if it's not covered, there totally is a documentary there that's worth producing and doing other stuff with, for sure. Now, another thing I want to get into, because I remember reading this a while ago about the morning papers, because I remember this guy who's in college working at my job, totally like a even more preppy version of Zach Morris to have everyone in people's mind. He's like, morning papers, greatest song ever. He's like, Purple Rain is trash.
Oh,
but he was like, morning papers was amazing. And I'm like,
okay. I mean,
and then,
well, that's not true.
And morning papers, actually, they would play it back to back on R&B radio out here with Damn You, because they were released as a double single. But I was kind of surprised by that comment. I mean, I don't hate the morning papers. I like it. Not going to say I love it. I put it higher than Arms of Orion. I know there's a lot. I know there's going to be people in the room. Hey, I love Arms of Orion. Get off of that. But we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, Morning Papers is a fine song. I think I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. Like, it's a fine song. It's, Is it a top 20 Prince song? No. Is it a top 50 Prince song? Probably not, you know?
Right.
So I mean, at that point, now you're just telling me you like it.
Right. Just like someone really loved Money Don't Matter Tonight, but they don't like some of the other stuff. I'm like, whoa. And then I remember meeting someone first time on like online, then meeting him in real life, and then he was like, is there songs from Prince you don't like? I'm like, sure. And I'm like, you, and he's like, oh, I love everything he's ever done.
Oh.
You know, so this is me being myself. I'm like, so you like all the silent tracks between the last song on New Power Soul, The Wasted Kisses, that's on your top list as well. Just being a little bit of a punk, but like I didn't like the version of Right the Wrong that ended up on Chaos and Disorder. I kind of like more the demo version. It's stuff like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't like everything. I got my first speeding ticket to We Gets Up, and I got held up at gunpoint with We Gets Up playing. So that's not my song.
Right.
When
Well,
Dudley played that one time, no. Go ahead, my man. I'm sorry.
It's interesting the way that you mentioned that song, right? Like you attached an experience to it, which is why I tell people all the time, like, I don't get into taste arguments. If you like it, then you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And that changes absolutely nothing about what I have to do with it. And if we're honest, a lot of the times when we like things or don't like things, they're experiential as well, right? It's not just that we heard a song and we don't like. It's like this situation where, like, if you go to a museum and you look at the painting and you say I like it or I don't like it, like that has way less to do with the painting than it does with you as the viewer. And that's true for all art, technically.
Right. That's just it, and it's true. I have it like built up to an experience. It's just that's one of the songs. Like when it comes on my random playlist, it's like, nope, haven't deleted it from the library. Like I deleted all of my Kanye, but then I had to re-up everything to it, and now it's like the Kanye comes on. I'm like, all right, if it's something from Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I can't pass it up with the other stuff. But there's something in here about Kanye and Prince, by the way, in this book that you guys, I can't tell you guys enough. You got to pick this up and support Scott. You should be following him on Twitter, social media. He's a great follow. Let's talk about, speaking of something you brought up on social media recently, this whole thing about if you're eating boneless chicken wings, it's not
Yes.
chicken wings. What is it?
Yeah, that's not a wing. That's a chicken tender or a nugget, but it's not a wing. A wing has a bone, and that's the end of the debate, right? So just say that I am a 40-year-old person who likes chicken nuggets or whatever, you know. It's okay. It's not a wing. We shouldn't call those things wings. This is a very serious issue.
My whole problem with eating a wing is I'm not one of those people that gets all the meat off of it. Like the
Yeah.
person that get everything to the bone.
Yes.
But
That's
I only
okay. That's okay. You know, eating a wing completely is an art, right? So that is something that has to be learned, has to be practiced. And look, and every wing does not deserve to be completely eaten, right? Some wings are not great. You know, I was at like BW3. You're not sponsored by BW3, are you? I was at BW3 last night. They were horrible wings. I just ate the parts that I could stomach. You know, I'm not trying to like be complete, you know, so that the 100% wing police don't come down on me.
right. There you go. I mean, I haven't had wings in years. I can't. Ever since losing the weight, I can't eat spicy food anymore. And I loved spicy food. And now, if I have the Chipotle hot, I start choking. Not like the raspberry choking, but still.
So, like, you don't have a cheat day or anything like that?
I have a cheat day. I'll have like some Cheez-Its or something. I got to get back to the sit-ups or whatnot. But, you know, I would like, it would be Monday night. It would be like Monday Night Football or whatever. I get wings from a certain place that's super popular, get their classic hot. If I can't handle Chipotle hot anymore, I'm not going to be able to handle that. I'll be having to call an ambulance. So it's over
That's
for me.
fair.
Spicy.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for you. I will eat your
Like
wings.
my friend was eating wings in front of me the other day, and I'm like, I can't. He's like, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, no, no, no. I appreciate it because I miss the smell. You can just smell the hot sauce. I
Yeah.
miss the smell of that.
I
So
keep I eat wings. I just decided to make people love me for my mind. So
there you go, for sure on that. Scott, we could talk so much more. I was going to bring up something else, but I just want the story to go away. We'll hopefully have Bob Cavallo on one day to straighten up because it just gets me angry. Um, but anything that you wish to say in parting, like I said, I can't tell you guys enough. Pick them up. Get through this whole thing of the one book thing. And these you can read in a few days, and it'll make you look smart while you're hanging out at your Starbucks or your Caribou coffee. You smart. Uh, but I really also thank you for expressing in your detailed review of the immersive experience as well. But anything that you want to touch base on, the floor is yours.
not nothing specific, you know. There is something that came up recently, just like I think for maybe half a day or something on Twitter somewhere, where I saw people who, even at this point on the Prince timeline, they had not read his book, The Beautiful Ones. Like they were just like adamant about not reading it. And I guess I just want to leave out a message. You haven't read it?
I can't. It's just tough.
Yeah.
But I'm
Is okay now? Is it for the reason that it's like do you want to say what the reason is?
just knowing that he wanted it to go to the Super Bowl and then it ends at Purple Rain coming out, just kind of, and like, look, I support the author. I met him before, really nice guy. It's also tough. It's hard for me to read any Prince books since 42116. I have to read the $2 books because those are different. It's about the history and the legacy and other stuff. And it's not disrespect to other books, but it's just this one's just hard with those things in mind that we weren't able to see it completed to the Super Bowl.
Well, I will
That's
say this because I don't want to sound like, oh, you haven't read the book. Like that is not the energy that I want to come at you with on this. The energy that I want to come at you with is that the book is a celebration. And it is a celebration that is at least half devised by Prince himself. And so I would encourage people to read the book for that reason, right? It is a chance. I mean, you will be, of course, you will be sad reading it if you care that much about Prince. That's completely understandable. And yeah, that's probably going to happen. But,
right.
I felt sad walking through the immersive experience. I feel sad every time I go to Paisley Park. But then I recognize I'm not there to be sad. I'm there to celebrate. I'm there to appreciate. I'm there to learn. And this
Right.
book is like, I mean, going through it, going through the pictures, going through the facsimiles of, the writings and all. I mean, it's as close as you will get. I mean, short of the experiences you had personally, it's as close as most of us will ever get. And I say, go for it. Meet your friend, meet your cousin.
I do have multiple copies of the books, and I did give a few away. I just, it's like I want to support, want to make sure I made it on the bestseller list, all these different things. And I did open it, did breeze through it, looked at stuff. I know that isn't enough. That's not going to count as reading a book. So I'll be in minus 10, 50 to 100 books I read a year list. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I guess eventually I'll read it, and hopefully other people are touched by your words of why they should do it. And just as you said, that even the Prince immersive experience, as excited as you were to go, did make you sad. And I always like, it makes me feel the whole point of like, oh, I wish they would have done this stuff when he was here. I'm like, they weren't able to do it. Like, let's get over that. And that's another thing that you touch in this book.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm pimping him out. Um, just about this whole, I do like the whole thing, what would Prince do thing that you have in a book, but
Yeah.
just some of these things that they have to get over, and your suggestions of how Paisley Park can be a better museum, all these different things. And the last one called Uncollected Bits and Asparagus Tips. No artichoke, huh?
Alas.
There you go. Scott, thank you so much for your time. I'm hopeful that I can have you back on again. There's going to be changes happening that people are aware of. Really want to make sure that they get stuff right. Maybe we can have you and others on to see what they would want for the future going forward. And I'd love to have you back on eventually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I serve at the pleasure of the fans.
Thank you again so much, Scott. We're going to have a few more links to his book that are going on right now. Scott at Mr. Woods, thank you again so much for your time. And we'll be in touch. Make sure to give him the follow on Twitter and everything else that we've been bringing up in his Patreon as well. Support, support, support. Much love, man. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you. All right, guys. Great episode. For people that are going to be watching the replay, so make sure to get on this stuff. It's really, really good. Share it. Thank you guys so much for your time. Again, thanks for subscribing, letting people know about it, sharing in the groups. Might do a small after show. We'll see. We'll know in the next 10, 15 minutes. You guys will know. But again, and I'll put up donation links, and we're going to be having more links for Scott. They're throwing on that. Make sure the people that are ordering it take photos on social media, tag myself, tag Scott. Want to make sure that those things are taken care of and support talented people. Let's get back into doing that, shall we? All right, you guys, thank you so much for your time. Again, possible after show. If I do one, it's going to be kind of short. Don't be expecting 60 to 90 minutes. All right, you guys, thanks again. Thanks for everything. Much love. Until next time, keep it funky, and thank you, Prince.